Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Audit and Standards Committee of the North of Tyne Combined Authority, and to those who are watching online as well. First of all, I'm going to read out the names of the councillors I think are in attendance and the officers to ensure that everybody's around. And if you can just say yes at that point, that would help if I can find my list, which I appear to have mislaid for the time being. Has everybody else got that list? I've got it's here. Councillor Ferguson? You say yes?
Yes, I'm here, Chair. I'm here, Chair, yeah.
Councillor Rankin?
I'm here, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Liz Dunn?
Yes, here, Chair.
Okay. Mark Swinburne? Councillor Mark Swinburne? I can see you, Mark.
Yeah.
Councillor Debbie Cox? We can't see it, but I presume. Oh, sorry. Councillor John Paul Stevenson?
Good morning, Chair. I'm here.
Good morning. Councillor Catherine Seymour?
Good morning, President.
Good morning. And then we've got the officers. Kevin MacDonald?
Yes, good morning, Chair.
Morning. Tony Candlish? Well, he was there. Phil Slater?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Susan Richards?
I'm here. Good morning.
Okay, morning. John Softly? I'm sure John will be joining at some point. Janice Gillespie? Yep.
Yep, morning, Chair.
Morning. Katie Lang?
Yeah, Chair.
Paul Armstrong?
Yeah.
Cameron Waddell from Mazars? Morning. Bob Thurgood? Well, he's obviously streaming this anyway. Is Lynn here yet or not?
No, Chair, she's not, so I will act as far as I can in her role until she joins.
Yeah, and Liz Kerr?
Here, Chair.
Okay. So in terms of how the meeting will run, we'll just go through the agenda as normal. We'll start off with the welcome and apologies, declarations of interest, the agreement of the minutes of the previous meeting, but then we'll change the agenda around. And the item which is number 6 on the agenda will now become item 4 on the agenda and will become the Statement of Accounts 2019-20. We'll do A, B, and C at that point. If that's okay with everybody, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. The papers of the meeting have been circulated in advance to members and are public available on the North of Tyne website. So if we start going through the agenda proper now, the first item is welcome and apologies. I believe we've got apologies from a number of members. We've got apologies from Councillor Penny Evans, from Ray Glindon, from Scott Dickinson, and I think that's about it. And in terms of a welcome, just for everybody concerned, I'm Doug. Sorry?
Jeff Watson.
Jeff Watson. Okay, thank you. Any others? Right, fine, moving on to the next item. Are there any declarations of interest? I've not been made aware of any. No. In which case we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting held in July. And that contains a number of elements. So can I go through those page by page, please? Firstly, for accuracy, and secondly, for any matters arising. I am aware that there's a matter arising in terms of the statement of accounts, but that will be dealt with under the statement of accounts item, which will be the next one on the agenda. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6.
Chair?
Yep. Okay, Mark.
Can I just pick up on page 6?
Yeah.
Page 6, well, I have it on page 6, bullet point 4, with regards to the question on credit risk.
Yep.
It states on there, not available investments with unrated building societies. There was actually another part to that question which I raised, which was with UK local authorities, 59.784 million. I requested further information on that. And I'm not sure whether other members received the email as I did with regards to further detail, but that question was answered in that further detail, which was provided to members. So the minutes should reflect the question that was asked, which was with UK local authorities. So could I have the minutes updated to show that, please?
Is that okay?
Yes.
That's fine. Yep, we'll do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Swinburne.
And
I think we're on to page. Sorry.
item, Chair, item
Yes.
8 on page 6.2,
Yeah.
which in the Constitution on page 175, it read as decisions by the elected mayor will be subject to scrutiny by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet. This should read as should read as decisions by the elected mayor and cabinet will be subject to scrutiny by the scrutiny committee, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. That's all.
Is that okay?
Did you get that?
Yep. Okay.
Just the word decisions by
Yes.
the
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and okay.
Okay.
All right.
That's fine. On page.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Chair, could I just say on that point? Sorry, I've had
John?
a few technical problems joining, but
Yeah.
scrutiny would also scrutinise decisions made by the mayor as mayoral decisions, as well
Okay.
as decisions made by cabinet.
Okay.
Just to clarify that point.
Okay. So can we amend? Does that minute need amending accordingly then, or not, John?
I think we can reflect it. but
Okay.
I
Excellent.
think
Thank
we
you.
can cover that.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Okay. And page 7. Finally, page 8. But of course, the date and time of the next meeting, the meeting on the 22nd of September was actually cancelled, and this is the revised date for the meeting today. Okay. So can I sign those amended minutes as a true copy of the meeting? Is that agreed? Thank you. Okay. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, and we've now moved item 6 to item 4. So that is the statements of accounts 2019-20, and there are 3 elements in there: the audit completion statement, the annual governance statement, and then the 2019-20 narrative and the report and statement of accounts. I guess, Cameron, looks like you're on first in terms of presenting reports with regard to this item.
I think so, Chair. I'll go through the report, not in so much detail. I work on the basis that the members have read it, but just draw out the key points, I think. So I think the first point just to make, because I think it's quite important for people just to be aware of, is the pandemic has caused quite a bit of difficulty for all the bodies preparing accounts and everything else this year, but also for auditors and auditing them. It's just not been as efficient as it would have been if we were actually being able to see people face to face. Because walking into somebody's office and asking them for something isn't as efficient as having to schedule meetings, etc. So it's worth bearing that context in mind, I think. Broadly speaking, the audit it's gone a little bit more slowly this year than we might have hoped for those reasons. But it is on track as it stands at the moment to be completed by the end of the month. So we are waiting for some more evidence in some areas and some further amendments as we speak at the moment. So we did make some more progress yesterday. Notwithstanding that, Chair, in terms of the executive summary, although it does say work is ongoing in this area, we are nearing completion in terms of work on the accounts. And we do anticipate there will be an unqualified opinion on the accounts as well. However, it's really important that we do highlight, because the audit report isn't in here because we've had to consult internally about a modification to the audit report. It's not a qualification, but it is still something we feel we need to report, consistent with other clients across the country, and that relates to the impact the pandemic has had on the pension fund. Because of the impact on the pension fund, at the year end, a number of investment managers, fund managers and valuers highlighted the fact that while they were able to provide a figure to go into the accounts based on professional judgment, that figure was more open to a degree of uncertainty higher than that would have been prevalent in previous years, solely because of the impact on financial markets and property valuations at the year end. So what that means here is that within the pension fund, a number of fund managers have highlighted that valuation uncertainty. And because at group level, Nexus and NOCA has a share of assets that's material, we feel we have to include what's called an emphasis of matter paragraph in the audit report, which merely highlights the disclosure in NOCA's accounts round about that issue. But just to reiterate the point, it is not a qualification, and the report will be shared in terms of wording when we've actually got that approved through our internal. Because understandably, where I'm going to change the standard audit report to say something slightly different to what normally happens, clearly the firm thinks it's important somebody else checks that, make sure I've got it right, Frank. In terms of value for money, we have finished that work, and we will be reporting unqualified value for money conclusion. On whole of the government accounts, the National Audit Office only issued the guidance on the 5th of November, I think, and set a deadline of the 4th of December to complete the work, which was a little bit of surprise. We thought we might have got a little bit more than a month's notice, but because NOCA falls below the threshold, we think there's a good chance we might be able to get that done by the 4th of December deadline. And then finally, on the wider powers, clearly it'd be very important to know if we had any questions or objections from members of the public or anything else, and we haven't. And there has been a degree of spate of those over the years, so it's not something on occurrence. On the next page of the report, 29 of the agenda pack, that sets out the work that's outstanding, apart from the normal closing procedures we always do after this. Around about related parties, I think we were nearly there. We've got one member outstanding from one of the councils, but what we've done yesterday is the team have looked at the council website that person is, looked at the declaration on that website, and we're satisfied security needs. And so we broadly finished that work now. In cash flow, Katie will correct, I think we're just about there on that now. There is a little bit of work still to do in funding analysis. Going concern is broadly complete. We need to update consideration of that in light of recent discussion with John Fennick at Nexus and the extension of the light rail support grant to mid-January, if not the end of March, which made a difference to the inclusion of that area for Nexus, and therefore for both NEC and NOCA. And group consolidation, we're just waiting to get that and dusty really tight. But what we can say about the group consolidation is that we are satisfied with the work on both Nexus and NEC now. That's broadly complete. In terms of significant findings, I won't spend a huge amount of time on that, but the work and management override, we've not identified anything significant. That's important, clearly, because that would be the way that the accounts might be manipulated to make them look better or worse than they actually are. In terms of revenue recognition, again, nothing significant to bring to your attention. Again, quite important because that's to do with recognising correct here. We've spent a bit of time on that this year and cut-off, also linked back to sort of the pandemic impact as well. And also on defined benefit, we received the pension fund assurance, I think last Monday. We've looked at in the context of
Cameron, I can't hear you. Cameron, I can't hear you probably. Don't know whether anybody else can. You breaking up a wee bit.
I'll try putting the volume up a little bit. Oh no, I won't, because it's 100. Can you hear me okay now?
That sounds better, yes.
Right, well, I'm just going to, no, I won't do that. If I pull a plug in something, the whole thing might switch off. It's too temperamental. So in terms of benefits, sorry, the pension scheme, we got the assurance from the pension fund auditor last week. We've looked through that, satisfied there's nothing material. In terms of the significant findings from page 32, we do highlight the fact that there is still, in our view, scope to improve the quality of the draft accounts. We do recognise the pandemic may well have had an impact on that this year, but we still think that quality assurance process needs to improve, so we don't have quite so many errors. Because all that does is basically increases the amount of time to do the work, increases the amount of time officers have to spend to reach from as well. It's not efficient, so we do highlight that again this year. And you'll notice later on in the report, we have put an internal control matter around about the need to spend that too. So I'm not going to labour the point, but there is work work's been on in that area.
Okay.
In terms of the internal control deficiencies, apart from that one, we do highlight around about significant partners, there's management response there in terms of the risk register published on the website. We do highlight quality assurance, and responding appropriately. And we do highlight an issue about related party where we have had a bit of a chew on, put it northeast terminology, like information like that, and we think that is sufficient for another control deficiency. And again, you'll see a management response around about that, which we think is fine. I'm not going to go through the summary of misstatements, Chair, because I'm sure you and other members of the committee will have read it. We've set out the ones that are unadjusted. Those are important to us because we will need from Janice a representation to say that what the reason is for not amending those. The traditional reason tends to be one of materiality, and clearly they're not material to the North Combined Authority, so therefore wouldn't have an impact on the audit report if they're on it. We need that representation. And then the next few pages goes through amendment intent. Notably, one or two big ones around about cash and short-term investments and income and expenditure. But they are what they are. We've set out what they are, and they have been amended. And the disclosure ones, there's quite a lot of those. I think that comes back again to some extent to the pandemic, but also just highlights that quality assurance point. VFM, I'm not going to go through in detail, Chair. It's an unqualified conclusion. We think you've got the response we expect. But I will just quickly draw to the fact from 2021, a new code of practice was approved by Parliament earlier this year. That removes the binary qualified, unqualified VFM conclusion, moves more towards narrative reporting and recommendation. And for all of our clients, we have offered to do a session with the audit committee equivalent when the guidance is available from the NEO, just to set out what the new criteria are, what our responsibilities are, and the sort of work we're doing to better them. So that offer applies to NOCA as it does any other client, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Beyond that, the Appendix A is a management representation letter. The only real difference between that and this year is on page 45 of the pack. You will see that we do highlight the impact of COVID-19 around going concern and just ask for that reassurance from the Treasurer, Janice. The audit report's not in there yet because, as I said, it has to go through our internal process. It is unmodified. The only exception to that is reference that after paragraph around about pension valuation. In independence, we don't do anything other than do your audit, Chair, which is right and proper in the way it should be, particularly in light of the revised ethical standard. It's quite difficult to do anything other than the audit these days, which we think is a good thing. Beyond that, happy to take any questions from members, but I wasn't going to say much else. What we will do, Chair, is we will issue a letter to members of the committee, just setting out the results.
No, it's just Lynn.
Wait a minute.
Sorry.
Have I gone again, or am I back?
No, you're back. Cameron, you're fine. It's just Lynn joined and was actually had a speaker on by mistake. So carry on, Cameron. I know you're nearly finished anyway.
Just very, very quickly going to say that we will issue a letter between now and I think the cabinet meeting, and just setting out the results of the work that isn't quite complete yet. So I assume that I don't know if it'll be Katie Canis or whoever will circulate that to committee members as well, and before that meeting, so that you can see the results of the work that wasn't quite complete as it stands at the moment. So apart from that, Chair, I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Okay. All right, thank you, Cameron. Any questions from any committee members in terms of Cameron's statements? Either shout at me or well, I simply want to ask one in terms of the fact that obviously you talked about quality assurance and the issues that are being raised in the report. My only question would be, obviously there's a timing issue in terms of when different audits of the different organisations are finished. What if you've got to move from one to the next, and then to finalise the statements and all the rest of it. But is there an issue in terms of? Is there a potential issue here in terms of resources? That's one of the questions I was going to raise with our finance team in terms of those kind of the issues that have arisen in terms of that quality assurance. I don't know whether that's an issue or not.
I think Janice is the most appropriate person to respond.
Yeah, absolutely.
To that. But what I would say though is that the pandemic on many of our clients, and it's rare it hasn't, has had an impact where finance teams in particular had multiple responsibilities at key points, and that clearly is taking capacity away from many clients around about the accounts and the ability to respond to queries. And I'm sure that applies to NOC as it does many other local authorities that we've been auditing and are still auditing as it stands today.
Yeah. Yes, Chair, if I can respond, I think certainly in the, I guess, the discussions that Katie and I have been having over, I guess, more recent months, there is probably a mixture of issues that have led to some of the quality assurance issues that Cameron and the team found in the accounts. And I do think there has been a capacity issue compounded by not only, I guess, the event of COVID, but also the fact that we became accountable body for the LEP in April, and that encountered additional activity, which I guess was also then complicated by the event of COVID. So absolutely recognising that I probably need to consider additional capacity and resource into the team, absolutely. We've already agreed with certainly the constituent authorities kind of an improvement around some of that quality assurance they can also take part in as part of the final accounts process. So be assured we have a number of activities in train to address both the capacity issue and indeed how we work at the end of the chain around Nexus audit and NECA.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Any further questions from any committee members? Can I ask, Lynn, in terms of this particular part of the statements, do we actually have to recommend this to anybody, or is it just to note and comment on it?
It's to,
Katie?
no, Lynn, I don't know if Lynn's talking. It's for audit and standards to consider and then recommend cabinet to approve if they approve.
Okay. Councillor Swinburne, I can see your hand up.
Chair, I'm not sure we can recommend or approve if it's not complete.
Has anybody got a comment on that?
I think, Chair, the audit is substantially complete, subject to the outstanding items Cameron spoke of.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there a potential to approve subject to any changes which come around at a later date, subject to that additional work?
That would be in line with what all of our other clients are doing at this stage, Chair.
Yeah, fine, thanks. So could we find a set of appropriate words to cover that, please, in terms of what this committee has to approve? So to consider and recommend approval subject to any subsequent changes due to the work of the external auditors. Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Can we agree with that, committee? Agreed. Thank you.
Great.
It's agreed. Thank you. Cameron, are you staying? Or are you going now?
I'm going to go if that's okay, Chair, because I've got another client I need to talk to them about their accounts. So
okay,
it's never ending at this time of year. Thanks.
Okay, best of luck. Thanks, Cameron. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye. In which case, we'll move on to 6B, which is obviously now 4B. The annual governance statement. I think that's Phil Slater.
It is, yes, thank you, Chair. The statement is essentially the same as it was when you saw the draft version, a few months ago now. Just a couple of things to highlight. Firstly, an apology that the covering report is actually the Cabinet's covering report rather than the Audit and Standards Committee's covering report. The narrative is effectively the same, though. The only thing that's different is the wording of the recommendation, which I'll come on to in a moment.
Okay.
So the actual annual governance statement itself, as I say, is the same as you saw last time. The only big change is an extra section has been put in, section 7, which covers the investment fund programme. And that was just lead officers and statutory officers felt they just wanted a bit more narrative in around that. So that's why that's there. Beyond that, section 5B is the external audit opinion. And as Cameron said, the audit is not quite complete. So the wording for that will need to be updated before the annual governance statement is finalised. Although, as he said, it will be unqualified. So it's not going to be a huge update. So the recommendation, Chair, would just be for Audit Committee to approve the annual governance statement subject to that external audit being completed, and for that then to go to Cabinet for sign off by the Mayor and the Head of Paid Service. I see we have a question from Councillor Swinburne.
Thanks, Phil. Councillor Swinburne?
Sorry, I know it's always me.
No.
There's a couple of points I would like to raise. Number 1.10, which relates to social media use. We continue to use Facebook, Twitter as primary social media platforms, provide information on news and events for residents, businesses and visitors. I'm not sure who it is who's responsible for our communications with regards to that. I'd like to question the use of North of Tyne's social media usage. Reason for that is it needs to be, I think, a bit more stringent in the use as to how we're using that. I'm aware that last week it was used to promote a petition, which has subsequently been taken down. We need to be making sure that our social media use is appropriate to North of Tyne and not for any other aims and objectives that people, individuals might have. We're a public body and we need to be putting ourselves across appropriately and not for others' requirements. So can we make sure that whoever's responsible for that is doing it appropriately, please? Additional to that is, let's see if I can find it, section bullet point 5.4. We've got all staff must undertake data protection, e-learning training annually. Is there any scope to include members within that training on an annual basis, just as a reminder, so that all members are aware of obligations with regards data sharing? Happily, that's not been an issue with regards North of Tyne, but I can't confirm that that's not been the case elsewhere with other authorities. And I think it might be beneficial that members are just included in data protection catch-ups or reminders, just to make sure that we've got all bases covered. So I'm not sure whether it could be included in there.
Yeah, well, on the first point, the social media, we'll obviously pass those comments on to the relevant people. On the data protection, yeah, I think that's something we can look at. Data protection for North Tyne also comes under me, as it happens. We've delivered the training to the officers, and I think with members, it was trying to get an understanding of what data protection training you probably had within your own authorities. Once we've got that, then yes, we would look to try to get something for members. We have done it for officers in that there is an IT package that they can watch a number of videos and ask questions on, and whether that's the appropriate thing for members or not. But yeah, it's something we can work on.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Any further questions from any committee members in terms of the statement? In which case, Phil, can you reword your repeat your revised recommendation so that we can approve it appropriately?
I think it's subject to any changes from the completion of the external audit. Audit and Standards Committee approve the annual governance statement for it to go to Cabinet for sign off.
Is that agreed? Great, thank you. And now part C of that report is, I think it's report and statement of accounts. I think that's you, Janice.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, as Cameron's already highlighted, these are not the absolute final set of accounts, but substantially they are the adjusted set. I think Katie will be able to confirm that we are still finalising the last version of the group accounts for this position. What I would say is the ACR highlights kind of the key adjustments to the statement of accounts, but what I would say is the bottom line position for the North of Tyne Combined Authority standing on its own, if you like, has not amended. So the outturned position as reported has not changed. I think the key adjustments shown in the ACR give members a sense of where the adjustments have been made and the key changes to the accounts. So substantially they are ready, amend for the group position, and then hopefully we'll be ready to publish once approved by Cabinet at the end of November.
Okay.
As I've mentioned before, we do take on board Cameron's points around quality assurance, and I'll just continue to give members the assurance that we have steps in train, and I'll be reporting back to Cabinet through the rest of this financial year, and indeed can update this committee in terms of the progress we've made around those actions.
Okay. I think Janice, it's fair to say that this committee actually received a set of draft report financial statements at the last meeting as well.
Yes.
And a number of questions raised, including the ones that Councillor Swinburne has already raised earlier in this meeting.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say about those, or in terms of whether those numbers will have changed and whether those answers are still correct in terms of their fact, given what's happened since that first set of draft accounts was issued?
I think substantially the answers are absolutely still correct.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of the responses to Councillor Swinburne. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Swinburne, you have your hand up again? Yep.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to thank for the responses that were received as members with regards and the information that was passed on following those questions. But if I could come back on those, I appreciate that. As was said at the time, that was a fine balance between transparency and the code. But if I could just say that when we're looking at other expenses as at the time it was in the draft accounts, it was £72.8 million. What I'm going to say is when we're a public body and we're looking at a public purse, the information that was provided, I see no reason why we can't put an additional table in which gives the information. I've looked at the additional information. I know that figure's now gone down to 43.3 million, but it is a public purse, and just simply to say service expenses, I see no reason why we can't have another table in those accounts which show what those other expenses are. As I say, we're trying to show that we have nothing to hide unless there's a specific reason why we don't want to show that information. And I see no reason why we can't put that level of detail in there for the public to see without them having to come back and put in an information request to be able to get that level of detail. I see no reason why we can't do that. Additionally, the one with regard to the investments for the other UK local authorities. So well aware that it's normal business practice to share or to lend to other local authorities. And on page 84 or 26 of the accounts, it states that recent experience has shown it's rare for such entities to be unable to meet their commitments. And there's no evidence at 31st of March 2020 that this was likely to crystallise. I think we've seen since then that there's been a change, and I quote Croydon Council as being the one where they've declared a bankruptcy. So thankfully that we haven't lent to Croydon Council, so we're not caught up in that. And I see no reason again as to why we can't show who we're lending money to and being open on that one. And I know we're going to come on to the risks later on, but just while I'm here now, I think lending money to other councils now needs to actually go on the risk register. There's a lot of councils who are saying about the financial difficulties that they've got, especially with the current pandemic that we're in. If we're lending money to somebody else, they may or may not be having financial difficulties themselves. I feel that's now something that we possibly need to consider on a risk register. It may not be a high risk, but it's something we need to now recognise as risk. But coming back to the openness and transparency, unless there's a specific reason why we shouldn't be shown this, and I'd be very concerned as to why are we not simply putting that extra table in or the extra information which would happily show the public as to where that money's going, Thank you, Chair.
Janice?
Chair, yeah, I think there is absolutely no reason at all why those extra tables for both those points are not in the accounts. I guess I understand completely the requirement for transparency and the challenge of balancing that with what is substantially a large set of accounts. I think what we can do in terms of for 1920, we will publish a simplified version of the accounts on the council's website, and we can publish that detail with those. And we'll look to think about how we can include that table in next year's statements, those two tables. I guess in terms of risks, I guess I would expect the Treasury management strategy absolutely to capture our risk management approach to investing with other local authorities and understand absolutely the concerns that the member has raised. So I'm happy to discuss that further as a specific risk proposal and to be challenged around how our Treasury management strategy manages said risk in light of the current position that we are in. Just to give you some more assurance, I'm on a call, I think it's a session the week after next, which absolutely is about, I guess, managing financial risk of Treasury management in the current environment. So it'll be interesting to see and learn and understand what other authorities are doing across that particular avenue. Members will know that the returns that we get from the DMO are significantly low, and increasingly we become challenged as to where we place any surplus cash. But appreciate the question, and we'll absolutely look at that as part of the overall risk review.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or items of clarification from other members of the committee? In which case, can I move to the recommendation, which I think, are we simply asked to consider the audited statements accounts as they stand at the present time, including the narrative report, and that is as far as we can go at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, yes.
So is that agreed? Agreed? Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move back to what was item 4 on the agenda. Which is the internal audit quarterly update, and I think that's Kevin and Tony.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll take the report. Chair, as members will remember, we brought the internal audit plan for 2020-21 to Audit Committee at its meeting in July. This report just provides Audit Committee members with a bit of an update on the work that the internal audit team have been doing since July, and an update against each item on the plan agreed in July. Since we brought the report to committee in July, it's now been mandated that all combined authorities have to participate in the Cabinet Office's National Fraud Initiative data matching exercise. That obviously wasn't included in the plan at July, but since that announcement came out, as a team, we've obviously been working to make sure that we meet all of those obligations, which are obviously detailed in the report, Chair, just to make sure that we now fulfil all of the requirements of the Cabinet Office, and all of that data has now been extracted and submitted appropriately. The report then just kind of goes on to explain, Chair, the work that the team have been doing. It takes the 6 items which were mentioned in the plan and just provides an update against each of those. Of those 6 items, 3 are currently underway, and work is in progress on 3 of those, and the remaining 3 are scheduled to commence in Q4 of the year, Chair. What we've done, we've made been very mindful of working with officers within the combined authority in terms of the scheduling of those pieces of work, to make sure that we undertake those pieces of work at the most benefit of the authority, and that's something we would look to do at all times, and continue to do that. Okay. Chair, I wouldn't propose to say too much more on that, but obviously happy to answer any questions.
Any committee members got any questions or items for clarification? Well, I would simply say thanks for bringing us up to date. I mean, what worried me about the fact that we actually didn't have a meeting in September was that obviously things can actually drag a wee bit, and there's a lack of reporting back. So it's good to see the amount of work that's actually continuing, and both at the present time and in the future. So I'm really happy about that. That's good. In which case we just need to move to the recommendation. If nobody's got any comments, recommended to consider and note the internal audit quarterly report, which I think we have duly done. Councillor Rankin. Councillor Rankin? Councillor Rankin, are you wanting to speak?
No, I wasn't there, sorry.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Councillor. In which case, can we agree with that recommendation? Great, thank you. Thanks, Kevin. So moving to the old item 5 on the agenda was strategic risk and opportunities register, and I think that's Phil Slit, and that was on the supplemental agenda.
That's right, yeah. Just a couple of things to really highlight from the risks of changes from the previous times you've seen it. I think at the last meeting we'd highlighted we were going to produce a new opportunity around the LEP partnership, and we're trying to maximise that. Well, that's in there now. You can see that in the appendices with the relevant word and a couple of actions to take that forward. So that'll now continue to come to the committee so it can be monitored in due course. In addition to that, as we have done in the last 2 meetings, the LEP's actual risk register is attached for information, as is the Joint Transport Committee's risk register. Obviously, they're dealt with elsewhere, but they're there for your information. I think the one other point I'd like to highlight is just on the delivery of devolution risk, which remains red. I think the reason for that is that there's a piece of work ongoing to look at the whole investment programme and identify the impacts of COVID against it. Although it's red because there's uncertainty there, that work's still ongoing. It's not red in as much as saying there's a problem. It's just saying it's a very uncertain area with COVID, etc. So that work continues, and they're looking towards January to try to sort of be a bit clearer where things are by then. So that's why it remains red. I think those were the key points, Chair, and the report's just for note.
Okay, so any comments from committee members? I think it's taken on board Councillor Swinburne's views in terms of obviously there's an issue in potential issue in terms of borrowings between local lending and borrowings between local authorities because of the current financial situation. I think generally, and we've covered COVID off in here anyway, all the implications from that can be significant to both the local authorities and in terms the private sector as well. It's really just to make sure that we're covering off everything in our risk register which is arising from those issues, both micro and macro, and I think we're doing that in terms of these items in here. And it's good to see that some of the items still are red, because it almost keeps people's eye on the ball, and actually we are dealing with it and making sure that we're actually trying to reduce that risk over a period of time. So I'm quite happy about that. Okay, so we're simply asked to note this report. Is that right, Phil?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Are we happy with that? Agreed. Thank you. So moving on to what was item 7, but that's to do with standards. It's just, is there anything verbally to report, John, in terms of standards?
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, members may be aware that we are still waiting to hear from the Local Government Association with the Model Code of Conduct for members, which they are preparing, and we hope to update committee shortly on that.
Okay, thanks, John. Anybody got a view and a note on that? Everybody happy with that? Okay. In which case, we come to the last item on the agenda, I think, unless I've missed it, the date and time of the next meeting, which is due to be the 19th of January 2020. I presume it'll be on the same basis of this in terms of a virtual meeting. Unless anybody has anything to raise under any other business, I will formally close the meeting. And thank you for attendance and your involvement, and many thanks, and just keep safe, everybody.